Next up is Alan Pitt, and he's going to talk to us about his company, EmergeMD, which has started for a very personal reason, which I think Alan will share with us.
So I think Matthew kind of asked me to talk because he couldn't believe somebody had a story that fit everything together. So he asked me to tell you a little bit about me and my family first. So I'm just going to go through that, and then we'll talk about the application. So the first picture there you see on the upper left is my father in 1965, and he carried the usual black bag, and he would make house calls. And in that black bag was pretty much all you needed in 1965. Well, that black bag has gotten heavier and heavier with options. And now there's probably not a physician on this planet that could carry that black bag. There's too many things that we can do for each other that any one physician can provide that care. Well, I followed my father's footsteps, and I'm a physician now. I'm a fairly senior physician at a big neuro institute in Phoenix, Arizona. And life plays cruel tricks on you. So several years ago, my mother fell off a horse and became a quadriplegic. So you can see her down in the lower corner. Her name is Sheila Pitt. You can look up her website. And she was an art professor. She's gone back to teaching art, but from her wheelchair. And what I noticed was I had her aerovac'd out, and I took care of her in the hospital. I could control that, but each step along the way, from acute to subacute to chronic, I lost control. And today, I'm just as disconnected as any of you from your loved one in terms of her care. She's 100 miles away in Tucson, and her care sounds more like a book on physiology with care providers. There's somebody for lungs, and there's somebody for kidney, and there's somebody for neuro, and her care is completely fragmented. So it's hard to complain, though, when you're middle-aged, when your mother's a quadriplegic, I'll tell you. So my sister, who's the other person there, she's a social worker. And she's also trained in therapy. And years ago, she used to work for Hospice of the Valley. And I want to be clear, the word hospice connotates something where you go and you die a few days later. So hospice is not somewhere you go and die, at least particularly for Hospice of the Valley. Hospice is somewhere you go to live, but with an acknowledgement that you're mortal. So people in hospice now may live in hospice 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. And Hospice of the Valley in particular, and most hospices, are looking for ways to care for people. And it's absolutely critical that they provide a patient ecosystem. My sister found that she was trying to run caregiver seminar support groups, and they would show up once and only once. And the reason for that was they didn't have time to come back because they had so much time they had to put in taking care of their loved ones. And so there was this further fragmentation of the ecosystem based on those demands. So EmergeMD is a company that I feel passionate about. I like helping them. They are a telemedicine company, but they're actually kind of more than that. They're trying to manage the continuum and to provide an aggregate so you can see outcomes. So most telemedicine is transactional. They're looking to do something more. I almost call it an ACO accelerator for those of you in healthcare from the C-level. So if we look at the application here, this is basically a social network, like probably many other applications you've seen. The providers put in their name, their role, their cell, their page, or their email. But the different thing here is that we've actually emulated workflow. So this very much looks like a care cycle, if you will. So you could reach out to somebody by name or by role, and they basically built in call calendaring. So I may not know who you are, and I simply click on your name or your role, and you get a message from me, and you can be brought in to an application. And you can see here that you get a clinical capsule. So imagine, if you will, you're a social worker in the home, and you want to reach out to somebody. So you basically can send this clinical capsule off to somebody, give them a little information. It bounces back into the same cues that you've seen here. The provider knows that there's someone in need, a social worker, and they're able to come into consultation and answer the question. So we can bring up all sorts of things, all sorts of documents to add to the care cycle, and it makes it very easy to provide the care. So this is really kind of a big deal that we're able to do this. We can bring that doctor right to the bedside. So I brought in a friend, and this iPad becomes your, well, look at that. I brought myself up instead of my friend. And so this iPad becomes your little black bag where you're able to have a distensible community around that patient. you're able to bring together that entire network of people in a way that makes sense. So if we go back to where we were, the goal here really is that we want to bring everything together around that patient, to stand those folks up. We want to manage that continuum. We want to look at outcomes. We want to be able to support that patient not just with a single provider, but that entire ecosystem. And we want to be able to provide reassurance at the bedside, because ultimately that's what telehealth is about. It's about reassurance. It's about making sure that everybody's okay. If we can do that, we've really accomplished something important. Thank you for your time.